91 Williams, 92 Curry.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Huddle Postgame Huddle. I am Tony Gerderman here at Northwestern following Ohio State's rough and tumble 21-7 win over Northwestern. Here in the press box right now, I'm joined by Devin Radcliffe of Buckeye Huddle as well. Devin, this was not an ideal day to have offensive football. It was not an ideal day. It was maybe an ideal day to have defensive football. We still saw some issues there. But, what's your overall just takeaway from this one game of ugliness?
So big picture, here's where you're now in November and coming down to home stretch, Ohio State won. So breathe a sigh of relief. They're still in the hunt for postseason championship opportunities. So that's the big picture takeaway, win in advance. However, and that's a big however, this is not a game that inspired a lot of confidence if you are a fan base or coaching staff or a team and players that have postseason championship goals, dreams, and ambitions, because this was very ugly and a lot of it, and I'm not trying to discredit Northwestern's performance because they gave Ohio State everything they can handle and then some, but there was a lot to be desired in terms of Ohio State side of the football.
Yeah, and I will say, being here, that the conditions were terrible in terms of the wind. That's why you saw the only scoring that happened in this game, other than Ohio State's last touchdown, was with the wind. And I was writing down during the game that the team that scores against the wind is going to win this game. And we saw that bear fruit there at the end. But you look at what Northwestern was able to do. They only threw the ball once against the wind in the first half, and that was a fourth down play. They didn't even bother trying. They went to the Wildcat. They tried to outnumber Ohio State and did it effectively, I think, until Ohio State went to a 4-4. What'd you see that was allowing a running game with no passing game to speak of?
Well, you just said it, actually. It took Ohio State a little bit to decide, hey, is Northwestern really going to stick with this? Is this really what they're going to do? And, Ohio State sat in the nickel. Northwestern did a good job of putting Ohio State's corners in a position where they had to be the ones to make the tackle. And, we saw in the first half that the Ohio State corners couldn't make those plays when the opportunity presented itself. So Jim Knowles' second half and the defensive staff, to their credit, decided, you know what, we're going to make Northwestern, they obviously just want to run the ball. Like you said, they went straight Wildcat single wing. So you know what, we're going to match them. We're going to go 4-4 here. And we saw Cody Simon play a lot. Josh Proctor come in, basically play that fourth linebacker role. And we're going to force Northwestern to throw the ball, or at least attempt to. And they matched numbers, matched bodies, got a much better personnel matchup to slow them down in the second half.
I think Jim Knowles watching this thinking, if C.J. Stroud can't throw the ball, there's no way Northwestern is going to throw the ball. Let's just put 8 guys in there, and if they happen to hit something, great. And you saw, like, the longest completions today were basically like 12-yard curls. That was about the extent of what you could do with this offense. But also, they did not help. The Ohio State receivers did not help C.J. Stroud today. They dropped a number of passes that were in their hands.
I can't recall a game that I've watched in college. Forget Ohio State for a moment, just in college football in general, where we saw that many catchable balls end up on the ground, just flat drops. This game could have gotten blown wide open early, actually, if a couple of those catches are made by the Ohio State wide receivers. I could think of Emeka dropped what would have been a walk-in touchdown. Stover dropped a big one. Fleming, it seemed like, dropped a few, hit him in the chest. Again, I know wind's a factor. I know the weather was awful, but at the end of the day, these are guys that, are going to be NFL wide receivers. You got to put that on film. Green Bay don't want to hear it that you don't play well in less than ideal conditions. So you got to catch it when they come to you. And Ohio State wide receivers did definitely struggle today. Outside of Marvin Harrison Jr., who I think, caught everything. And when everyone knew he was going, C.J. Stroud was going to throw him the ball on 3rd and long, he was catching everything. I don't recall him having a pass that he dropped.
Yeah, Julian Fleming, 9 targets, 1 catch. that was a rough outing for him. And it wasn't all his fault. Like he certainly dropped some, but there were passes that were, 8 yards over his head. And you saw CJ Stroud would just like shake his head, like, what am I supposed to do? I'm trying to throw. And it's not like throwing with the wind was a good thing. It was just less bad than throwing against it. And I thought both teams tried to adjust to what were conditions that you're not going to see many other places. And so they did what they could. But I was surprised. Were you surprised how much Mayan Williams played? I thought he was going to be maybe too banged up, but they needed every single snap from him in this game. So I thought he toughed it out, but he still does not look 100% to me.
No, sir. Even on his long touchdown run there, 25, 30 yards there to put Ohio State up 14-7, I didn't think he'd ever get there. It looked like he's running on – it honest to goodness looks like he's running on one leg, and he's giving it all it's got. This is not an effort question. Obviously, he is playing banged up. I think he played every single snap today at running back. I don't recall seeing a second running back in the game at all this game. So you can't question his toughness right now. But at some point, you got to think big picture. Henderson's out. Williams is banged up. Somebody has got to be able to come in at running back and give you 10, 15 snaps, even if you got to go like NFL-ish and be like, hey, you're our third down blocking running back. Just so for one play, Williams isn't on the field and someone else is taking on pass pro or running Hayden out there. And I mean, to give him when you know it's going to be you're going to hand it off. So, you don't want to put a freshman in a tough spot, but we know you're going to hand it off. Get him in there a couple times just so Williams can save a couple shots on his body when you know he's not going to be getting the ball. It's
funny you say that because I did see Chip train him out there once, and it was to pass block.
Okay.
And so they had him out there, but I also liked the way I think they can use Emeka more in that running game. So you saw that. You also saw some fake stuff to G. Scott to open up some other runs and some play action stuff. I think the more you do with Emeka, especially when you have no running game right now, like to speak of, the more you can do that isn't just Mayan Williams or just Travion Henderson, I think is better for this offense. Would you agree with that, or please tell me if I'm wrong?
No, I see what you're trying to say. Trying to get at. You got to find ways to manufacture those explosive runs, and obviously, a player of Emeka's caliber is dynamic with the ball in his hand. We saw him on a punt return today. It was a big booming punt return, and he took it back almost 20 yards, which is huge in a field position game like today. So getting him the ball on jet sweeps and design runs, obviously a way to and on the perimeter no less. Get him the ball in space where he's got one guy to make miss, and it could create an explosive run.
Yeah, and we're getting ready for Ryan Day here at the Ohio State side of things to discuss where things are, and here he goes. So let's throw it to him right now.
Force you to, in the rain, force you to change your game plan. When did you make that change? And I'm going to pass the passing game, but why not? Why couldn't you run all that?
Yeah, it was. I've never been around conditions like this. I don't know what the numbers showed, but there must have been 30-mile-an-hour winds. And if you ever tried playing golf in 30-mile-an-hour winds, it's hard to get off the tee, forget to throw a football. So we saw this coming, so we had a plan. You can see we're under center some and tried to handle it. I mean, there were times where I was concerned about the snap coming back into the shotgun. It was so windy, and obviously there was rain there. So we tried throwing the ball. Very, very difficult to throw the ball for sure in this game, but almost impossible into the wind. And when you're playing against somebody that knows you're not throwing the ball, they put 2 extra guys down in the box. Usually they put 1 guy down, and there's a safety in the middle of the field. When they put 2 guys in and play zero, say, what are you going to do? And there's only 2 things you can do at that point. One, you get them to the extra defender, and you try to run them over, which I thought Mayan did a couple times, but they made the tackles. Or you get the quarterback involved and try to equate numbers through a quarterback run, which is not something that we typically do. But this was an extreme case, and CJ had a really good pull on the 3rd down, or I think it was the 4th down. That was good. And then he had the big run, the explosive run there to seal the game. So, we have a couple of those in our back pocket if we need them. We don't like to go there if we don't have to, but we did. And really those are the only 2 options when you really cannot throw the football, which we tried to. You can see we had some things that were designed. Even when we tried to get the ball in the perimeter with some of the movement passes, it still wasn't just crisp because that ball was just darting in and out. So I can tell you this right now, I'm glad this game's over with.
Nathan Baird, Cleveland.com. Impression of the defensive performance that for a while there were times where Northwestern was offensively controlling this game up front too, but over the course of this game, that seemed to swing back in your direction. What did you see through the defensive line, especially in the second half?
Yeah, I thought they did a nice job of incorporating the quarterback in some of their run game, and they had a couple good ideas, and but I also think our defense played strong. And as the game wore on, you realize really the pass was not going to happen. You just start bringing guys lower and lower down into the box. But I thought a couple of the short yardage situations were excellent. You still got to make the play. You still got to defeat blocks, and they did that. And there was a point in the game where the defense really had a lot of energy. You could feel that field flipping. We decided coming out of halftime that we really needed to win that third quarter, even though we knew they were going to get the ball. We took the wind because we felt like it was important to get some momentum in that third quarter. We didn't get a lot of plays, but we did score, and that was big.
Spencer Holbrook, Letterman Row.
Ryan, I know that you haven't been able to turn the film on or anything yet, but is there a lot that you can actually learn from a game like this, or is it just kind of throw it away and move on?
No, you can learn a lot. Yeah, you can learn a lot. I think the first thing is that we found a way to win a hard game like this, and it wasn't about anything other than winning the game. And I think when you get into November and you get into certain games, it's like, well, how can you win by X number of points or whatever? And this had nothing to do with that. When you're dealing with these type of conditions, it's impossible. And I can tell you what some of the issues are going to be right now. There was an extra guy sitting at 3 yards. So what do? You either read them or you throw it. And one of those was out of the picture. So, could we have done some things better? Absolutely. But it was a very challenging day. That, again, I'm glad is now behind us.
Steve Hellwagen, 24/7 Sports.
Still got to get home, I guess.
Yeah.
Second quarter, it seemed like you guys were having a hard time converting those 3rd and 1s, 4th and 1s, and he just didn't seem to have a lot of explosion. I know he broke the one later on.
Sure.
Did you ever give any thought to getting Dallin Hayden or Chip Geronimo some carries as just a change up, maybe to change the angles and the trajectory of the run game?
Yeah, we talked about it at one point, but we felt like mine was running good, and there was just a lot of guys down in the box, and we felt like with more and more at bats that he'd start to break them there, the more opportunities he had. And that's part of the run game. So, again, for us, whether it's an RPO or reading somebody, we try to equate numbers that way. And on days like today, when you're lining up under center, it's very difficult. The only thing you can do there is, again, run over the extra guy or play action and try to get the ball quarterback out of the pocket on a few out-of-pocket passes, which, we attempted.
Clay Hall, SYX.
So you're not concerned or unsettled by their ability to run the ball, control the clock, and possession?
I mean, at the end of the day, it comes down to scoring points, right? And they did. They had a couple first downs, but they really weren't able to score on us. And I think that's a tribute to our defense and how well they played. Because anytime you hold someone to 7 points, even in conditions like this, it's a job well done. And they were involved in the quarterback. And the quarterback ran hard, and I thought we tackled him well. And he took some shots in there and kept playing. I give him a lot of credit because in a style of game like that. The other thing was the Wildcat. They had that package where they're trying to equate numbers that way. So. Hats off to Fitz. Got a good game plan, and that's why he's been here for a long time and a great coach.
Over here, Austin Ward, Rivals.
Ryan, often feels like CJ running is the last resort. You guys don't want to put him maybe in harm's way. Is this a break glass in case of emergency situations today?
Yeah, I'd say so. CJ wants to run. It was something he said I'll get the same thing last week. He said that. But we know how important it is to keep CJ healthy, and he's not going to take shots unless we need him to. We needed to today, and he did it. And so you can see what he's capable. And when we need him to do it, he's there for us. And he has a weapon. He's got good feet. You can see him run down the sideline. He almost took that one all the way to the house. So, that's kind of what happened today.
Do you think seeing examples of that, whether that's for him or future opponents, like maybe that has to be more part of it moving forward?
Well, that's the balance you try to find, of is it worth it to get the quarterback involved and give him and expose him to the shots that could potentially put him out of the game, or do you need those yards? And I think that's where you have to make good decisions, and you have to take a deep breath at times and keep working through that, knowing that if you involve the quarterback, you might be able to make a few yards, but you're also exposing the hits. And we needed it today in these conditions at the right time, and those 2 runs were huge. I thought that we didn't just throw them in there to make 4 yards; they were big hits.
Cameron Teague Robinson, The Athletic.
Ryan, does not converting those short yardage downs concern you, or is it more so the thing of the weather conditions and them having a chance to the box?
I mean, we're gonna look at it and realize that we could have moved guys. You know, even if there's 2 extra guys in the box, you know, we still gotta convert on those situations. So yeah, we don't want that. But you know, when there's 2 extra guys down, because it's probably, you know, it's real 0 low coverage, there's going to be an extra guy. No excuse, we should still convert. But when there's no threat of, you know, any kind of pass at all on those situations, because in the past, in those 3rd downs, you know, shorts, you know, if they put the middle of the field open, we're going to go get it and try to score. When you can't do that, it's a whole different feel. Angles change because, you know, there's 2 extra guys down there.
2 more
Again,
questions.
no excuse. We got to do a better job for sure. But I think that played into some of those things early.
2 more questions. Stephen Means, Cleveland.com.
To follow up on what Austin was asking, that philosophy is not really wanting your quarterback to take shots. Have you always had that philosophy, or is that some of that CJ skill set, or is it experience with Justin in the last 2 years and some of the shots you took out? You got to beg them at that time.
A little bit of both, a little bit of all the above. Yeah, I think, you know, I think that affected Justin a little bit, certainly in the national championship game for sure. And you know, but you know, when JT was here, we decided we were going to run JT a little bit more. That was all part of the decision. And you know, I think with CJ, you know, he's such a weapon in the pocket, what he can do. You know, we got to be smart about when we put him into those situations. But that's not has nothing to do with CJ. I mean, he wants to compete. He wants those opportunities. So when the time was right today, he did it to win the game, and that's what's most important. You keep winning and you move on, despite these really difficult conditions today.
And final question, Rob Aller, Columbus Dispatch.
Ryan, CJ seemed frustrated, and then there had to be a
Not as frustrated as me.
there had to be a transition point. Like, when did he realize that this isn't going to work? You guys
Yeah, no, I don't know. I mean, we didn't verbally. Yeah, we didn't really talk about it, but there was that point there where, you know, I think there was one maybe to Cade, there was one maybe to Julian, and you know, they were so low that, I mean, there was just so much green grass, and man, I thought he threw a couple good balls in the wind, just absolutely just took it and, you know, guarded the ball. It's almost like throwing a knuckleball into the wind. And yeah, I mean, that's really frustrating because now you know you're going to be swimming uphill all day, and that's not something we're used to. But he got gritty and made some big plays. So yeah, that's not when you think about going into a game, that's not typically what you want as a quarterback. So I thought he did a good job of being poised because I was a lot more frustrated than he was for sure. And he kept he kept working at it every play and didn't let that affect his teammates in the huddle.
I was going to say, how did you break it to him in terms of you got to be the tailback now in a sense?
Yeah, we just talked about it, and I said, "You okay? You know, if we decide to have you read a couple guys here?" And he was absolutely. He said the same thing last week in the 4th quarter. He actually came up to me, and what a sign of a great leader and a tough player.
Coach, thank you very much.
You got it, guys.
Let's try to throw over to Pat Fitzgerald, see what he has to say.
We're not going to be able to have many.
That thing's moving. I don't know if you guys can see it from where you're sitting, but even snaps, the ball was really moving. And I thought that would have to be the priority, just catch the ball, right? And then execute from a standpoint of into the wind. I'm a really bad golfer, but you tee it low, right? And when you're hitting with the wind, you kind of tee it high and you just kind of let it work. And that was kind of the mindset, let's keep it down low, below the wind, going into it, and let's see what can happen. We wanted to get maybe a little bit more height on a couple of the ones with it, but the wind just grabbed. Once it got up over maybe about 10 or 15 feet, just about every throw and every kick, the ball just took off and sailed.
Do you have any updates on how Brendan Sullivan's doing after that hit?
Yeah, I mean, he was in good spirits after the game, and I asked him how he was doing, and he said, I'm doing fine, but I wouldn't expect any other answer.
Speaking of Sullivan, you mentioned that Mike Jenkins' game plan involved the weather and took that into account. How did he plan to use Sullivan's legs in the game plan, and do you think that he utilized that successfully?
Yeah, there were times that we did. That's a great question. There were times, that we had it as part of design quarterback runs, and then there were times that it's always just being, I think, just an instinctual athlete and going out and trying to make a play and do whatever he can for his team and his teammates, and he's just going to keep getting better. I know he was really critical of himself after the Iowa game, and we're starting to see some growth and maturation, which that happens through experience. And I'm really proud of his toughness and his grit and his I think the way that he bounced back after a game that he learned a lot from. That's pretty darn impressive to me and gives me a lot of positive hope for not only the end of the year, but also for the future.
Two more, John, and then.
Coach, you talked last week about your best players needing to play better. With this game going against such a highly ranked team, you had great performances from guys like Evan, Cam, Tommy on defense as well. What did you see from their approach and really just living up to this?
Yeah, I mean, nothing different than we've done all year, frankly. I think just the guys just trusted themselves and played, and didn't try to do too much. And it's been, the thing that as I said here with 3 left, that I really feel like I failed at this year with this group is just haven't been able to get them to settle down and trust themselves and trying to do too much instead of just your job. And that's because they're great guys and they're terrific teammates, and they want to do everything they can to help the team win. But using my golf analogy from the punting, sometimes you can grip the putt too hard, and I can't get them to snap out of that, and that's obviously my responsibility. And I got 3 great games left, 3 great opportunities with this group, and I plan on trying to work hard to get them to trust themselves.
And then, with the tight end room having injuries coming in and then going out early, how did that kind of affect what you guys were able to accomplish?
It just creates another opportunity, right? I mean, Lawson got in there for a little bit. We had a plan with some of the Wildcat packages to be able to get some other guys involved. I got to look at the tape to see, how that actually was executed. At times it looked like it was really good. At times it looks like, we played the Ohio State defense that, was pretty darn salty. But all in all, it's next guy up mentality, regardless of position. And, I'm just really proud of the depth there, and the guys are working really hard.
Coach, you kind of answered my question already, but I did want to ask. I mean, this is the lowest amount of points.
I think we're waiting for maybe CJ Stroud to come by. So when he comes by, we'll jump over to him.
Is there a coincidence there? Of course, the weather played a factor there, but a coincidence that the defense showed up the most against 2 of the top.
Yeah.
Devin, you and I can go for now while we wait for CJ Stroud. Speaking of CJ Stroud, I'm sure he's going to be asked plenty about his running. This is the first time we've seen a legit called run that I can remember with him. That wasn't a read option or anything like that. He wasn't reading anybody. It was just like a quarterback power, sort of thing. Very effective. I think it was 6 for 79, something people have been clamoring for. Ryan Day said it's a break glass in case of an emergency, which tells you just how difficult things were today.
Yeah, we saw the JT Barrett famous quarterback power, and it went for 3.5, 4 yards, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, but like Coach Day was talking about and was discussing in the post-game press conference, you got to have something. And he did a really good job. Coach Day did a really good job explaining how you got to match numbers somehow. We can't throw it over the guy. We can't run him over. We don't have a choice here. We got to run the quarterback. I mean, it's basically the same thing in terms of X and O's drawn on a whiteboard. It's the same thing Northwestern did. They did it from a single wing, just get the quarterback off the field, and we're just going to snap it to our running back. Ohio State did it with the quarterback, and again, especially since they haven't done it in 2 years, it really, basically put the game away for him today. Running CJ Stroud.
Yeah, and there's the one 4th and 1, the first time he kept one where he took it down inside the red zone and could not have been more alone for a while on that one, and just very effective on the day doing that. Ran the ball 6 times, like I said, for 79 yards and a 44-yarder at the end, his second longest run of his career. So effectively helping out Mayan Williams and getting the rest of that running game going, because they needed any help that they could get. And so good job by him, because there was no play action. There was no run fakes. And here we go to the Ohio State Buckeyes, CJ Stroud and Mayan Williams.
I mean, we've said many times throughout your career, you're willing to do it. Sometimes it just seems like it's the last thing you guys want to do to maybe put yourself at risk, but had to do it today. You made a couple big plays late. How did it feel to you win a game a different way?
Yeah, first and foremost, I want to give all glory and praise to my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, and just appreciative coming out and getting a hard-fought win and tough conditions. But like you said, we had to find another way to win. So I'm like that every game, though, where I tell Coach to run me, or if he wants to, or if he doesn't, it's up to him. So usually every run play I do have a read, and I'm reading a certain player. So a couple of times in the game where my defender or my gap was closed off or it was open, so I would take it. So
Dan Hope, 11 Warriors.
Sorry about that, CJ. CJ, with all the questions you've gotten in your career about running the ball, is there some validation in being able to prove that you can do that today?
Nah, I don't really care. It's like I'm willing to do anything. I'm willing to do anything to win, and if that's throwing the ball, running the ball, so I don't play this game to please anybody. Or, of course, I want to be appreciative of Buckeye Nation, which I am, and the fans out there that support me. And but at the end of the day, I'm here to win for my brothers in the locker room and my family back home. So, in any way I can do that, then I'll do such.
Joey Kaufman, Columbus Dispatch.
TJ, on the read you made to keep it was it just over. What do you think was kind of critical on breaking out some of those runs?
Well, it's my read every week. They don't really switch. I mean, just on the kind of the Q power that we ran, that was the only switch up I really had where I knew I was keeping the ball. But every other one was just reading the defender that took mine away because Miles did such a good job of getting out held. And it's more numbers in the box, which is tough to just run your back and run your back. But you can equate those numbers and somehow try to get the RPO game going or try to run your quarterback, which I feel like we did today. Then it can open up mine to have bigger runs.
Doug Lamorese, Cleveland.com.
Mayan, you left the game last week. Can you just take us through what it was like for you, preparing yourself this week, and then how you felt out there today?
I just want to thank God, just be out there with my boys today. Last week, that's when I left the game with a minor injury. It wasn't serious. It's because they had mentioned during the week. But it just feel good to be back out there.
Over here, Cameron Teague Robinson, The Athletic.
CJ, Ryan said these never been in conditions like this. For you as a quarterback, how difficult, can you put into words how difficult it was to throw in the conditions out there?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure the exact miles per hour it was, but those conditions are tough, especially you add rain into it. But I feel like we did a decent job when we were trying to throw the ball. I feel like I was ripping it through it a little bit. Just it's hard to tell where the ball is going from the receiver's aspect as well. But I mean, it's tough playing in the Big Ten, so you got to find different ways to win. So it's tough.
Quarterback, before you throw the ball, do you have to take into account the wind? And
I mean, it's such a bang sport, such an instinct type of sport. Like I'm not throwing up grass and like, you know what I'm saying? I don't have that type of time back there. And the killer's trying to kill me. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, I wish I was able to have like a little bit of peace back there to be able to kind of feel where the wind is coming from. But I'm playing the instinct ball. So I try to do my best, and it was really tough. And I'm frustrated with the way that I was kind of throwing it. I was trying to rip it in there as hard as I could, but at the end of the day, man, I don't have any regrets, man. I'm blessed to be able to play this sport, so I got to be able to take the good with the bad. So,
Stephen Means, Cleveland.com.
Because the weather was so bad, it was very clear after a while that you guys were going to have to run the ball. How difficult does it make your job when there's 9 guys in the box and you're getting hit all the time?
I mean, I want to say it's difficult. It's just a game of football. So you just gotta, you deal with it. Turn nothing into something.
Steve Elwagen, 24/7 Sports.
I want to ask about your touchdown. It was inside, and you cut it outside. Then you had your favorite lead blocker and Steve out there running interference for you. Just to finally put it in the end zone, you guys take the lead, I think, on that play. Just what happened and what it mean to finally break through and have that big play.
It just felt great just to put some points on the board because we know, we expected to put way more points on the board, but tough game. I'm just glad we came out with the win.
We got time for just one more question. Nathan Barrett, Cleveland.com.
The 4th and 1 late in the first half. Take it back to what you saw there during that, and did you know in pre-snap that was probably the read that you were going to keep it, or is it still just all instantaneous? What happens in front of you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just out there kind of playing with instincts on the 4th and 1, kind of have an idea pre-snap what they could possibly do. They could probably possibly take away mine because a lot of teams probably think that I can't run or I'm not willing to. So, I took that into my hands and try to get a first down for my teammates. So, I feel like I did such. It was the nickel who came off the edge trying to wrap around, try to get mine. So, I just feel like it was necessary for me to pull and try to get upfield. So, it felt good to get a couple runs in today. And Definitely, hopefully, Coach Day calls some more rounds. Maybe everybody in the world will be happy with me then.
Great, gentlemen, thank you very much. Folks, thank you. We got to get on the road.
Thanks, Gary.
You see CJ Stroud there giving some shade and some acknowledgement to the folks who want him to run. And, maybe you could say that the folks are right. I have an issue here that I need you to explain to me, Devin, because CJ Stroud said these are always reads every game. And if they're always reads, he is missing a lot of reads. I don't believe that they're always reads on these handoffs that look like reads that people are like, why doesn't he keep the ball? If those are always reads, why has he not pulled them more?
He is. He's just throwing it. So,
but with the RPOs, I understand it, but like with a handoff, when it's just a handoff.
So we could go back in last week and look at say, hey, maybe one of those bubble screens, for example, was an inside run call with a bubble tag based on whatever look they're given. So he pulls, throws, it's a bubble. So he did read it, but the response isn't him running it. The response is him throwing it. I think a couple of those slants last week he hit to Harrison Jr. were off of some sort of stretch zone action. So it looks like the read is, hey, if that linebacker fills, pull it, throw it over his head with the replace route. So he probably is correct in saying a lot of his runs are have a read attached to it. We're used to, as fans, seeing JT Barrett pull it and run, Justin Fields pull it and run. Well, his response is, I'm going to pull it and throw it to somebody. So he's probably correct in saying a lot of his run reads do have a pull component to it. It's just not him running. It's him getting rid of the ball. Going back to what Coach Day said, he's trying to protect Stroud. He doesn't want him taking shots. He's got to equate numbers somehow. Well, that's coming in the RPO game instead of him pulling and running the ball.
Yeah, and that goes back to play calling, where you're not going to call the plays that put him in danger, but when they absolutely need it. And as they said, the option is to throw it or to read it. And when you can't throw it, you have to go with a different type of read, a run read rather than a throw read. I want to go back to something that Pat Fitzgerald said that we didn't have on here, and that was that their game plan, Northwestern's game plan, was to work inside out on offense. What does that mean?
To work inside out on offense without hearing him in the press conference. Like I said, I think we missed the context of the conversation, but it looks like he was trying to attack the middle of the defense and then work out, set up some inside run game. He had the quarterback who could run the ball pretty good. That unfortunately took the shot at the end of the game. But you attack inside out, loosen up the perimeter, get them crashing in, and we saw their big play come off of bouncing outside, get their only touchdown of the game. So that's what I'm guessing Coach Fitz meant by that comment is, again, attack the inside of the defense, attack the middle of the defense to set up outside perimeter plays as the game progressed.
Northwestern runs for 206 yards in this one. Part of that I don't think is all that bad because it was 3.5 yards per carry, but they were able to sustain and well, maybe not sustain, but they ran the ball 59 times because they couldn't throw it. So you see this 206 yards and it's like, wow, that's really bad by the Ohio State defense. But the long run of the day was 19 yards. Like I said, they held them 3.5 yards per carry. As Ryan Day said, they only gave up one touchdown. So this was the 206 yards. What do you make of it? I don't think it's as damning as 206 yards normally is.
I think if I'm looking at it from a macro level, the biggest concern to me was a lot of missed tackles, and it wasn't just missed tackles. It was bad missed tackles where he couldn't get a hold of a guy and hold on till help got there. There was just whiffs that were creating bigger runs. Think of the big third down conversion where it seemed like 3 or 4 guys had a chance to put that quarterback on the ground, and we just kept missing and ended up putting on converting for a big third and long pass play, even if I'm not mistaken. They were able to find. So that was a concern to me that creates those yards after I don't want to say necessarily after contact, but when you're missing those spots in the hole, you gotta be able to put the guy on the ground, and that was a bigger concern to me than the actual overall yards.
Yards after attempted contact.
Yeah,
yeah, and
I don't know if that's even a stat, but it seems like that. It seems like we'd have a guy there to make a play. Ohio State defense with a guy there to make a play, and just couldn't get a hold of the guy to at least hold on till help got there.
Yeah, there was one where Brendan Sullivan, the quarterback, made about 3 guys miss on sacks and then hit, I think, Cam Porter right at the sticks for the first down. And there are a couple of those where he was pulling some plays out from where, but then they would still be like, well, you still have 40 more yards to go, and the conditions just didn't allow for them to actually capitalize on most of those. Defensively, the Ohio State Buckeyes, as I said, 200 and some yards rushing. Did they fix the issue in terms of, are you satisfied with what they did to alleviate the being outnumbered with that Wildcat? They picked up, I think the first time they ran the quarterback and they ran him out like in a motion, and then it like starts out in a pistol and the quarterback takes off, then it becomes a Wildcat. The first time that caught him off guard. I think from there they managed it fairly well in terms of recognizing it and handling it. But as you said, missed tackles. Overall, though, what's your assessment of the defense today?
Anytime you hold a team to 7 points, regardless of conditions, you've got to be happy, because 7 points is going to win you. It's going to win you a lot. You hold a team to 7 points, you're going to win the ball game this day and age. Not, I should knock on wood somewhere, but you hold a team to 7 points, you should expect to win the game, yards notwithstanding. So yes, it was frustrating. It's kind of, I know they don't like to say it in Columbus, but it's kind of the old school bend but don't break. Yeah, you may have got a first down or two, but we stopped you on first and second, third and obvious. No one could convert a pass play today. So, bend but don't break, kind of old school. I guess that's not kind of. It really was an old school. Old school as you want to get football game today.
Yeah, much more old school than Ryan Day would like to be. And we've got some drive charts here just to see how bad things were. The irony here, as I was looking at them earlier, of the here's Ohio State's drives. 3 for -4, 8 for 28, 3 for 9, 4 for 9, and those are all against the wind. So keep that in mind. First quarter they're going against the wind, and punt, and downs. And then you see the second quarter when they start lighting up the scoreboard with the wind and go 15-5 and 46. Just it's so difficult to move the ball in so many ways. And then here's the third quarter, of which 2 drives you see there. And then we've got more coming. There's the fourth. It feels like we were missing some drives there. But of that game, I think of the 3 longest drives, 2 of them came against the wind. Northwestern had one in the third quarter. Ohio State's longest drive was in that fourth quarter to basically clinch the game. But the amount of focus it took both teams to deal with this, like Pat Fitzgerald was even talking about the snaps moving from the time they left the center to the time that they got to the Wildcat or the quarterback. Ryan Day said they went in planning to go more under center this week. I still think they got here and it was worse than they expected.
Definitely agree with you there. I mean, we saw early on, Coach Day wanted to throw the ball. I mean, he was trying to throw the ball against the wind even. So to your point, I don't think either coach was expecting it to be that bad of conditions today that they got. And, we saw it in the game today. I think twice the referees stopped the play because the ball had blown on the ground where they had to reset the ball. So that just tells you what the conditions are, because how many times have you ever seen in a football game where referees got to stop and reset the ball? I mean, we've seen it on the tee every once in a while, on a kickoff, but how many times is the ball laying on the ground and it just starts rolling because the wind's blowing so hard?
Yeah, no, it was bad. And it happened at least twice. Just watching CJ Stroud, I was watching CJ Stroud and Kyle McCord in warmups, and they were throwing the ball against the wind and it was fine. And then you get into the actual game and all heck just breaks loose. And I wonder how much just a little bit of the wind blowing would affect a lot of those passes that would hit the hands and then weren't caught. Just affects everything a little bit differently. I want to talk about the offensive line, the Ohio State offensive line. This has not been a good few weeks for them. 3 games in a row where the left side isn't looking good, the right side isn't looking good. What was your assessment watching this? Because there was the short yardage stuff that they weren't picking up in the first half, long stretch play getting blown up. Just your assessment of the offensive line right now.
So I think we shall see going forward here how Coach Day and staff look at this film, especially in the second half. But it looks like they found something running more downhill, and we saw it last week a little bit too against Penn State with Henderson. downhill, much more tight zone, and even the under center, Coach Tressel power eye run game, and these backs are able to hit it scrimmage. You saw Coach Day again today. He obviously his baby is stretch or outside zone, whatever you want to call it. And Henderson and Williams, it doesn't seem to just hit right. It seems like again we saw early on, especially not quite sure what to do with the backside nose tackle. Jones is trying to take him and overcome right off the snap. The center's trying to climb the second level. They're not really, and he made a play on I believe in one of the first third and shorts or fourth and shorts was a backside nose tackle again, like we saw against Penn State. I don't, not going back and watch the film again, obviously, but I don't recall how much stretch they ended up running in the second half again. But it seems like it was much more tight zone. Let's get downhill run game. Obviously, we saw C.J. Stroud pull it and run for a couple big plays there at the end of the game, but it seems like the identity of the offensive line might just be, hey, dare I say, Urban Meyer-ish, we're going to get vertical and we're going to move people off the ball. Now you have to find some different things off of it to protect it now. But it seems like that's where the offensive line, when they need, can move people again, is getting vertical on more of a tight zone type run scheme.
Well, even Urban would use his receivers for a lot of the wide stuff, be it Percy Harvin or Curtis Samuel, stuff like that, to go wide and stretch the field 52, 53 yards, wide, and then use the running backs to go upfield. And yeah, I was that second half, the inside zone, was that also Ryan Williams' run, the touchdown run? Is that what they ran there as well?
Yep, he was it was a tight zone. They ran Stover cross on a slice, or it's got lots of terms, but came back and blocked the backside, and Williams was able to bend it back in between Jones blocking down and Stover blocking out on the end, and he bent it back for a touchdown. But again, it goes back to the angle the running back has and the push the offensive line's getting now. Williams is hitting it much more downhill or straight ahead as opposed to lateral that you would on a wide zone. And again, he just sees it better, and all of a sudden he's able to bend that cutback back where he hasn't been able to hit it like he has, like they want off that stretch play, like we saw J.K. Dobbins do, obviously, and Trey Sermon a year later.
Devin, what do you think the last time is that C.J. Stroud as a starting quarterback had more yards rushing than passing?
High school, maybe, if someone wanted to dig it up. Yeah, maybe in high school somewhere. But it hasn't been at Ohio State.
No, it hasn't. Again, great job by him just to keep stuff alive and he has said all along, I will run. I will do whatever it takes. Ryan Day has said CJ wants to run, and that's him putting his quarterback out there, because a lot of people will put stuff on CJ that he won't do this and he won't do that. And all CJ says is, I just want to win. And this was one of those games where you can't look at the stats. Don't worry about the Heisman stuff. As Ryan Day said, you're like in the fight now. So you just want to win. You see these games every year, whether it's a monsoon, whether it's just wind, where all you want to do is get out alive. So there is something to be said for doing that. They've done it 2 weeks in a row now, different conditions. Being at Penn State on the road is a condition in itself. This is a different condition, but at some point, and I guess maybe that point comes next week, you've got to be crisper than they were, because it's bad conditions today, but this was not a very crisp offensive performance.
No, exactly right. Again, I was just talking a little bit ago about the stretch play where here we again, backside shade. And the centers climb to second level. So we've got, you would like to see Ohio State find those answers to shore up the run game. Or maybe it is, past 2 weeks, again, they've hit long touchdown runs off of going back to more tight zone run game. So maybe the answer is we're a tight zone team. You've recruited, 7.5 foot tall, 450-pound Frankenstein creatures to play offensive line. Let them go maul people. And maybe that'll get that run game hitting again.
I've said whatever Ohio State does these next 3 weeks against Northwestern, Indiana, Maryland, running the ball won't convince me that they will be able to run the ball against Michigan. But if you see them reverting back or moving to what you're talking about next week, how much confidence, and they run it well, say they go for 250 or something doing that, how much confidence will that give you that they've found something?
I think it would be giving me more, I'm naturally more optimistic than most, it seems like, but I think it would give me more optimism because then again, it just opens up more of the offense in general. And again, you talked about today, Coach Day did in his post-game press conference. At some point, 4th and 1, everyone knows what's going to happen. If you're playing Ohio State football, if you're going to be Ohio State and you're going to talk about having big dreams, goals, and ambitions, you got to move somebody and get that yard and a half. And that's what really is going to come down to as you make a stretch here. We've got 3 games left in the regular season, and then who knows after that? At some point you got to make those plays.
I see people talking about the other games going on right now in the chat. Georgia leading Tennessee 7-3. Oregon's whooping up on Colorado already in the first quarter. At the end of the first quarter, Penn State tied 7-7 with Indiana. Illinois leading Michigan State 7-0. Who you got today, Tennessee or Georgia?
I was just texting a buddy of mine, and he asked me the same thing. I think I'm taking Georgia, but with only about a 51.5% confidence interval. Because if that offense gets humming for Tennessee, they, obviously they can put up points. You put up 50, whatever they put on Bama, you can put that on anybody, Georgia included. So if Georgia can play their style of game and force Tennessee to put drives together and not hit explosives, Georgia could pull it off.
Yeah, it's just watching Hendon Hooker and seeing Ohio State struggle trying to bring down Brendan Sullivan. Trying to imagine them getting a hold of Hendon Hooker makes things a little bit more difficult for them, but they have so far to go before they get to that point at this juncture with two games left. Indiana at home next week and then at Maryland before they host Michigan. I think next week will be fine. The Maryland game is now starting to that will be an issue for the secondary. I think Lathan Ransom didn't play as much in this one because they were doing the running game and bringing Josh Proctor in. But looking ahead to, say, Maryland, this is a very different kind of game than what they found here. But this is also part of Jim Knowles' defense where he wants to be able to do multiple things. And maybe is that Maryland more in his wheelhouse as that 4-2-5 defense?
I was just going to say, and I was actually expecting you to say, his reputation is he's a Big 12 defensive coordinator. Well, Maryland's a perfect example to demonstrate why you earned your reputation as a Big 12 defensive coordinator. That's going to be the closest offense Ohio State sees all year to a Big 12 style offense. So, Coach Knowles is going to have answers. And again, he's got a bunch of guys that came with him that have all sorts of various experiences. Cincinnati, obviously, and his support staff guys coming with him as well. So, they'll be prepared for it. They've seen it before. But it will be a good test, especially in the secondary, because they haven't really had a huge test. Penn State probably the biggest test they had this year in the secondary. So I think the subtle difference is, or not subtle, but important difference is they should expect to be tested in secondary going into the Maryland game.
Yeah, for sure. And just give everybody an update. I see Kevin Noon working behind me to set up the instant reaction Buckeye Huddle show. Tom, I have seen a text that he is in the elevator, so that will be coming shortly. I will hand off to them and then go join them somehow. We'll figure out how exactly I'm going to do it, but we will be doing that here in a bit. At one point during this game, Ohio State was averaging 6.8 yards per carry, and Northwestern was at 3.4, and that was late. So it seemed like the slog, but as it was, the week before, you get this one big hit and things look a lot better. But I don't know that it was just that one big hit that made this running game look better. I think it was, as Ryan Day says, they keep, pounding and pounding until it cracks and then they go and they're good. And I guess since you can't throw it, there's something to be said for running for 207 yards, I think is what they had in a game where you threw for 76, which I'll have to go back and see when the last time that they threw for that few yards. I think maybe JT Barrett may have had a sub 100. I know Braxton Miller had some, but I don't know that I ever expected Ryan Day and CJ Stroud to have a sub 100 yard passing game.
I'm going to go back and test some knowledge here, test some memories, but this game reminded me of the 2006 Illinois game where Troy Smith won the Heisman that year, and I don't know if he threw for 50 yards that game. It seemed like it was the same style of game. I think they won that game 17-7 or something crazy like that. And that at the time that offense was blowing everybody out of the water. That's one of those games where they just had to, hey, we're just going to go 3.5 yards carry, run the ball, play good defense. Troy Smith, carry out your fakes well, I guess, was about the coaching point in that game. But that's the last time I remember the weather having that much of an impact on a game that we saw today.
Yeah, I was at that game in the stands, and it was cold, and it was miserable, and it was dark, and it was everything that Illinois always is when you go to those games there. And that one was, and that was right up Jim Tressel's wheelhouse. Even though they were, as you said, an offensive team, ran the spread a bunch, and then you get to that game, and it's just like we just have to win. However we can do it, you just have to win, and they did that, and Ohio State did that today. That's twice now in 2 weeks where you found a way. And other teams, every championship team, every great team has these games. Sometimes an Ohio State 2002 team has about 10 of them. Other times they have fewer. It's good to be tested. It's better to come through it. And that was, I think, the one thing that Ryan Day said. The positive is that, the offense doesn't look great and the defense has its issues, but everybody came together and got the win. The offense did their thing. The defense did their thing. It wasn't just one side carrying the day at the end.
It's like I started the show with, big picture takeaway for Ohio State fans, and obviously the Ohio State football team it's a victory. Survive and advance down the home stretch, 3 games left. All you can really do is win, or it's by 1 or 100, win and let the cards fall or the chips fall where they may at that point. But, if you win out at this point, at the very least, Ohio State's going to be in Indianapolis, right? Big Ten championship game.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to Indianapolis, the Big Ten championship game, if nothing else. And then after that, playoff committee and whatever else you can't control take care of itself. But just win in advance for 3 more games.
Yeah, heck, they could have lost this one and still beat Michigan and still go. So there's a little bit of insurance built in if you beat Michigan, but that's a big if at this point. And we're going to talk about that one for weeks to come as it is looming on the horizon. And everything that Ohio State does now it's in my mentions on Twitter and it's on the message board. Everything relates back to you can't do this against Michigan. They can't do this against Michigan. And if they are playing Michigan in these conditions, then you're talking about a bad scene. But I don't think they're going to be in these conditions. But still, like you said, they'll have to figure out that running game, and maybe they have. Defending it, if Michigan carries the ball 58 times, that's a 28-point loss.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah, and so they're going to have to figure out a way to control the line of scrimmage better. Still waiting for Kevin and Tom to get up there and ready. They are very slow-moving people, taking their time, chit-chatting. There's a table full of cookies, so they're probably 6 cookies in at this point. Tom, being a photographer down on the field, doesn't always have access to the food that we have up here, so he gets up here and he goes crazy, and then a little sugar high, and then he starts to come down the second half of the podcast, so got to monitor him a little bit. Who is this coming in? Who is this? It's backlit. Is that Tom or is that Kevin? I can't tell. They're just random people. Does Tom know he's on? Yes, he does. Can you wave? There you go. I'm wondering, are you ready to go, Tom? Should I throw this? Should I say goodbye to? Should we say goodbye to Devin and I throw this to you and I come up there as we talk through this? All right, let's do that. So, Devin, thank you very much for joining me for the past almost an hour here. So thank you for that. Appreciate you stopping by. Everybody follow Devin Radcliffe on Twitter at?
I think it's Coach_Radcliffe.
There you go.
Perfect.
Perfect.
Is the handle.
There you go. And, of course, you can also find him at BuckeyeHuddle.com as well. So that will be it for this post-game huddle portion of the show. Devin, thanks. I will now throw this to Tom as we get ready for the Instant Reaction Buckeye Weekly podcast.
All right, thank you, Tony. I'm here in the press box after good.
Probably expected.
And however windy you think it was on the field, allow me to assure you, especially in the second half of that game, it was much windier than you could possibly imagine. I was standing in the south end zone, which would be the end zone to the right side of the screen, and literally getting pushed forward by the wind as I'm just standing there with a little bit of a hill behind me. It was that was as windy a football game as I have ever been a part of. And, you saw that play out on the field. Heard some interesting stuff from Pat Fitzgerald. I'm not sure how much you guys heard on the show, but Pat Fitzgerald had some interesting stuff to say about their game plan and what they did and why they did it. And, when they made those decisions, which were kind of interesting to hear. So we'll get into a bunch of that once Tony gets up here and we really start the Buckeye Weekly Instant Reaction Show. But overall, boy, that was just the first half was just, you kind of wondered, they practiced this week, right? That was a thing that happened. They did, in fact, practice this week. We saw them coming off the practice field. So we assumed, I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure they practiced, but it just, the first half was just as bad on the offense, defense, and special teams as you really have seen. There was just nothing to really hang your hat on in that first half. And then the benefit of having Ohio State level talent and playing a team like Northwestern level talent is you can get completely outplayed for 30 minutes and still have, the one play to Emeka Ibuka, and all of a sudden you go into the locker room tied at 7-7. And, and so it's sort of a free, you almost get a freebie for that 30-minute 30-minute debacle. And then came out in the second half, and I said on Twitter, look, this is a team. Ohio State is going to win this game. Ohio State's talent is going to win out. This is how it is. It didn't win out by nearly as much as you might have expected it to win out, but it did, in fact, win out in the end. So it was, Tony, it was a football game. In the loosest sense of the word, it was a football game.
It was an old-timey football game. So I think that will do it for that portion of the postgame show.
I think it will. I think, Tony, it's time for the Buckeye Weekly Instant Reaction postgame podcast.
Then let's do it. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly podcast. I am Tony Gerderman, here as always with Tom Orr. Tom, how's it going?
Tony, that was the most interesting football game I think I've ever seen. It was not the best. It was not the most exciting because it never really felt to me in the second half like Ohio State was in any real danger because they weren't, they were taking care of the football. It was just sort of Northwestern was content to kind of let Ohio State try and make a mistake, and Ohio State was content to not make a mistake. And so it was just kind of two boxers just kind of like in a clinch for entire rounds at a time. So they were never really in any danger, but it was a game that just, it really, that's going to be one that you're going to remember 20 years from now. That was the really stupid one with all the wind.
Yeah, it was like the Chipmunk cartoon with the Looney Tunes where they're like, no, you first. No, by all means, you go first. You go first. And it was, as Ryan Day said at one point, there's nothing to be, you're not trying to win any certain way. You're just trying to win because the conditions were so bad. And I do want to ask you, Tom, as I heard you saying it was the windiest conditions. What was it like out there? Please tell the viewers.
Well, as I was standing, the wind was blowing from the south end, the right side of the TV screen, to the north end, the left side of the TV screen. When you were down, the timing was very unfortunate for the whole game because, when you're shooting for a website that covers Ohio State, you always shoot with Ohio State coming towards you. So you stay in the same end zone for a whole quarter. And it seemed like the quarters when Ohio State was going towards the north with the wind, it was raining. So the wind was just driving the rain right into your face. And then when you were going the other way and you were in the south end, the wind was physically pushing you forward. It was like there were a couple times I was standing there and I literally stumbled because the wind was blowing so hard. Tony, right at the end of the game with about a minute left, the wind took my hat, blew it off of my head, blew it across the end zone into the field of play, across the end zone. It passed the pylon. A security guy was nice enough to get it. And I'm chasing it across the end zone like an idiot. Fortunately, it was between plays. But my hat traveled at least 20 yards, which would make it, I think, the third furthest anyone from the state of Ohio traveled in any one play during the course of this game. So, should my hat be on scholarship? Tony, it's impossible to say.
There was one point late in the game where C.J. Stroud's towel had fallen off. and he would go to grab it, and it would like continue to blow. And it was like, oh, you almost had it. You almost had it. And he chased it for like 15 yards before he finally got it. And it was just one of those days. Amazingly, no turnovers? That's
no turnovers
incredible.
either way. Yeah, it was, and
that's how cautious they were.
That was. Let's hit a super chat before Kevin strokes out. From Jeff Straley, Ryan Day says it was crazy windy in post game, but his play calling said, "Hell with it, we were throwing the ball." I mean,
early on,
yeah. I am just getting my first look at the game stats right now. You look at, Julian Fleming, 9 targets, 1 catch. Kate Stover, 4 targets, 2 catches. Mecca Buka, 4 targets, 2 catches. So those 3, there were only 4 people who caught passes. A total of 17 targets for 5 catches for those 3 guys, and then 8 targets for 5 catches for Marvin Harrison Jr. Tony, this is like week 3 of the why don't they just build the whole plan out of Marvin Harrison? Like, I know football's not that easy, but what if football's not that much more complicated than that?
Yeah, there were times where instead of running the ball, just throw something to Marvin and go get your 12 yards, your 12-yard dig, and pick up the first down, because they tried it with Julian and he dropped a couple. They threw some 10-yard passes to Kate Stover and he dropped a couple. And credit to the defense, they were able to break up a couple of those passes that would move while it was in the air, kind of blow back to the defense. So you're kind of covering the guy, even when you're not, because you're getting help from that second defender, which is the wind. And you look at C.J. Stroud's stats of 10 for 26 for 76 yards. But look at him running that ball, Tom.
He did run the ball, 6 carries, 79 yards, including that 44-yarder right at the end of the game. I mean, this was the game where, I think we've talked for a long time about the fact that, look, he can run the ball. They're saving it for a big moment. I think we very much saw this coming. I don't think we saw this as fourth quarter when you have to seal the game against Northwestern being the moment where you would finally see that the long con pay off. But it's very much like when Dwayne Haskins was never keeping the ball, and then they're playing TCU on the road and needed to score in the second half of that game, and Dwayne Haskins kept it and just walked into the end zone. C.J. Stroud made some very big plays with his legs, and I'm going to be fascinated to see what the college football playoff committee conversation around this game is like, and what the post game ESPN halftime, when they show this game, what are they showing? Are they showing a bunch of drops? Are they showing and is it being framed around the wind? Spencer Holbrook had a great point.
Don't know him.
He had a great point. I saw this on Twitter. He said, this is a lot like the Georgia-Missouri game.
Oh, no, totally.
Where it was, Georgia just played terribly. It was on the road. It's against a bad opponent, but sometimes you're going to play badly. And that was not raining sideways or 50-mile-an-hour winds. That was just sometimes you play kind of like crap. And, we were not listening to the college football playoff committee last week, but I would imagine that probably didn't even come up as you've got to ignore the Missouri game because it just sort of gets dismissed. This coming during that, you wonder, okay, Clemson beats Notre Dame tonight, and Georgia beats Tennessee close, and Michigan beats Rutgers by a lot. Is Ohio State number 5 next week? Or, is this going to be a game the committee overreacts to? Because, Ohio State simultaneously did not look good, did not look like they deserved to win the game, did not look like a team that's going to beat Michigan in 3 weeks, but also I was out there. That was not, you cannot just say, it's football. You have to play in conditions. You have not seen a team playing conditions like that for a long time.
Well, and there were plays that without the conditions would have gone for 6. Like Ohio State had Northwestern spinning a couple times. So you just couldn't capitalize on. Now, what I will say about the committee is they have people who stump for each team. And so the stumper for Ohio State will certainly need to be like, hey, the conditions were insane.
Did you hear about Tom's hat?
Did you? Let me tell you a story. But I told you lost your hat before the game too. You should have known.
I did. I lost my hat very early morning. Hours before the game, and it was fine the whole game. I actually had a lanyard, and I thought I could clip my hat to the lanyard. And there's a photographer on the other side, Scott, who is renowned for wearing sort of like a broad Australian brimmed hat, and he asked me if he could take my lanyard because he was worried his hat was going to fall off. And I thought, well, mine hasn't blown off for a while, so yes, by all means, Scott, take my lanyard. And then Tony, I think the lesson that we've all learned is never help anyone.
No, that's why I don't do it. So good advice there. Ryan Williams, 26 for 111, if I'm recalling the stats correctly, with the 27-yarder on the inside run, and then he kicks it out and looks more like mine, but still not 100% yet, in my opinion.
No, he very much looked like a guy who was playing hurt, and who, if you had 100% healthy Travion Henderson, I don't think Ryan Williams was playing in that game. And if that game was,
you don't think it's just they're just giving Travion Henderson a day off?
I don't think that they're just giving Travion Henderson a day off. No, Tony, I think that's kind of not. I think that's probably not, in fact, the issue.
Would that have been foolish in this game to do that?
Yeah, I think. Well, what I really would like to know, Tony, is, did Ryan Day have a sense? And Kevin was down in the post-game press conference, so he may know the answer to this. But did Ryan Day have a sense, that, hey, this was not a very good week of practice, or hey, this is, we knew, did he talk at all about the weather and play? Yeah, I mean, what did he, and you probably got to listen as well. Like, what did Ryan Day have to say about the weather? Because Pat Fitzgerald had some really interesting things to say.
Well, and Day said that they had prepared for it, and then he was like, and we still tried to tried to throw against the wind a little bit, and obviously it wasn't working. You could tell, and I said this to Devin on the post game show, that it was much worse than they were anticipating. And then when they got out here and they tried to do some stuff, it's like, well, I'm sure it's bad, but let's see if we can do it. And then you find out we can't.
Well, what was interesting was Pat Fitzgerald talked about the fact that, you keeping an eye on the forecast. And he said, like, about Tuesday, they kind of went, okay, it's not a given, but they put in the Wildcat. That's something that they had not really shown before this week. They put that in because he said he looked at the forecast and went, that you basically have to take 2/3 of what you would normally think you would do and throw it out the window, and you just kind of have to fake it till you make it with a day like this. We had talked, and I cannot for the life of me remember if this was on air or off air, but I said, like,
off.
Consider a Cam Martinez Wildcat package. This is a guy who scored 1 million touchdowns in high school, very elusive runner. It's going to catch someone by surprise. And, when we had that conversation, it was you either save it for Michigan or you show it the week before Michigan and make Michigan prepare for it. You could have broken glass in case of emergency today and just throw it out there. I mean, you would think it might give you just a little something different to show, because he's a good complement, I think, to Travion Henderson, to Ryan Williams, who's a little bit more of the thunder and he's a little more of the lightning. And you have Emeka Egbuka coming in jet sweep, and that becomes a very tough thing for people to stop. So, that's one of those. It felt like there was not a ton of creativity from Ohio State on offense. Northwestern, I think, came in with, okay, there are no bad. It feels like that was there are no bad ideas game plan from Northwestern, and you look at the final stats, and they were almost dead even in total yards. They were almost dead. The passing yards was 79-76 Northwestern. Rushing yards was 207-206 Ohio State. The total plays, Tony, Northwestern with 15 more plays than Ohio State. Third down conversions, Northwestern 9 of 20, almost 50%, and they were over 50% for most of the game. And then Ohio State 4 of 15, and Ohio State 2 of 4 on fourth downs. It just and 0 of 4 on fourth downs for Northwestern. It just felt like Ohio State kind of, Northwestern did everything they could to win the game, and Ohio State, I felt like just Ohio State was kind of like, well, we're going to win this game, and so we'll figure it out. And you could see from the first half, Ohio State's talent is going to win out ultimately, unless something really crazy happens. But I don't know how to feel about thinking that they kind of went, it'll be fine.
Well, I think Ryan Day is so confident that the running game will eventually break it, and he's
based on.
But it did, and it did against Penn State.
Yeah.
So it's like, is this might be some false confidence, or that's what happened, but it's not because it happened the way why you think it did, that sort of thing. But you're getting that, and it's happening. It's funny you mentioned break glass in case of emergency. That's what he clarified. That's what he qualified CJ Stroud as. Basically, like they knew they were going to have to do that. And CJ Stroud tells them every week, I'm ready to run. Just, let me do it. And so that's what Ohio State did. Northwestern went to the Wildcat. So like they both had to do some drastic stuff. And I thought overall, the Jim Knowles, they saw the Wildcat the first time in terms of at one point they were in the pistol, and then Brendan Sullivan goes in motion and it goes directly to the Wildcat, and they picked up a good gain. After that, they kind of was like, okay, we gotta be aware of this, and they started to do better against it. Super chat here.
Super chat from Greg Johnson wants to know what was Northwestern's yard per carry first half versus second half. And I will see if I can find that.
Late in the game, as you look for that, Ohio State was averaging 6.8 yards per carry, and Northwestern was averaging 3.4 yards per carry. And that was following CJ Stroud's run. So while Northwestern rushed for 200 yards, they averaged like 3.5 yards a carry to do it. So it's like if you give up 3.5 yards a carry, more than likely you're going to win a game.
Right. And 59 carries. That's one of those. When was the last time a team ran the ball 59 times? Because it felt like Michigan ran the ball a ton against Ohio State last year, and that was.
But they were scoring too much to.
Well, but that was like 44 carries, I think. 59 is wild.
They only threw the ball once in the second quarter when they didn't have the wind, and that was on a 4th and 8. So they didn't. They had no intention of throwing the ball when they had no wind. And even when you did have the wind, that didn't mean you were going to throw the ball well. It just meant that you're going to throw it less bad than the other 2 quarters. You didn't have the wind.
Well, and having the wind, and I'm still looking for those stats. Northwestern does not print paper box scores because
we know why.
Gestures vaguely. So normally you get the quarter by quarter breakdown, and that's very easy. I'm trying to slice and dice the virtual online box score.
Can't you go to Stats Broadcast and break it down by quarter?
You would think you could, and yet here we are. Let's see. Okay, here we go. Quarter 1. Okay, we can do this by quarter. All right. So quarter 1, Ohio State. We're looking for yards per rush or yards per play. Yards per carry. Okay, yards per carry. First quarter, Ohio State.
2.26.
2.6 for and 6.6. 2.6 for Ohio State, 6.6 for Northwestern. Second quarter, 7.7 for Ohio State, 1.3 for Northwestern. Third quarter, 9.4 for Ohio State, 3.8 for Northwestern. And fourth quarter, 6.3 for Ohio State, 3.1 for Northwestern. So it really was first quarter 6.6, and then everything after that was 1.3, and then 3.8, and then 3.1. So Ohio State did sort of solve it, but also they solved it not quite as much as you would expect, where they couldn't get Northwestern off the field.
Well, and I think it took them for a while, a little bit of time to get out of the nickel and go, okay, we're going to go 4-4. And we'll bring in Josh Proctor, we'll bring in Cody Simon, and we'll go from there. I tweeted out at one point when Northwestern had like 65 yards rushing in the first quarter or something. Over the Iowa game and the Penn State game, they rushed for a total of 59 yards. And they had already topped that in the first quarter against Ohio State. But I don't think anybody expected that to continue. That's why you adjust. That's why you have a defense that can go from 4-5 to this. And although I think maybe they should have expected more of this early on. And, but again, I think that no matter how you prepared for this win, you prepared for the win, you prepared for the conditions. Was it worse than you were expecting?
It was worse than I was expecting. It absolutely was. Because, you hear, if you look at the weather app, it says like 18 to 20 miles an hour. And then it was like, oh, maybe it'll be 25. I was like, oh, maybe it'll be 30. And then gusts to 50. And let me tell you, a gust of wind, I have a certain idea in my head how long a gust of wind lasts. It is not like literally the whole fourth quarter. That was more than a gust. That was sustained for quite a bit. And it felt like in the first half you had a bunch of rain, and then even in the third quarter there was some rain, this was supposed to be, we were told at one point like, okay, the worst is through, and then it was like, and then they make an announcement about in case of severe weather. It was like, oh come on, you cannot extend this game more. I don't want to stand out here any longer than I have to. And, and then it rained again in the third quarter, and it rained hard in the third quarter. And then once the rain finally got through, then the wind came. And it reminded me more of any other game that I've been to. It reminded me of the 2003 Wisconsin game up in Madison, where it was it poured at one point, and that was a game where it wasn't really supposed to rain, and it just poured, and so no one was ready. So it was just like, well, now my sweatshirt's soaking, and then the cold front goes through, and then it's really windy, and then it's like, the pneumonia bowl, good. This was, this was warmer than that, but that's the only game I can think of that I would really compare this game to the conditions on the field.
Devin Radcliffe brought up another game in the post-game show, the Illinois game in 2006. Where Ohio State won with Troy Smith. It was something like 17-7. And I was at that game. And it was cold and it was drizzly. It didn't rain through the whole thing. But I do remember being very happy that our seats, we moved to directly up against the press box to get out of the conditions.
Mm-hmm.
So that's Illinois. And now that was at least October. It may have been November. And probably foolish to go to a November Illinois game. But that may have even been a night game. I know it ended at night, but that could have been a 3:30 kick or a 12 kick, frankly.
Yeah.
With the conditions around Illinois. But, so go ahead.
I was just going to go through a couple of these stat things because they have a scoreboard on the side of the terrace on the left-hand side of the field. And they just are scrolling stats, and it was just like, really? What? Seriously? Northwestern has passed for more yards than Ohio State today. What? Northwestern has run for more yards than Ohio State until the very, very, very end. Northwestern has, and the third down conversions I talked about earlier. It was just an incredible day where, no sacks for Ohio State. The Ohio State, Northwestern didn't throw the ball much. They near sacks, but 10 of 17. Northwestern completed more than half of their passes. 10 of 14 for Brennan Sullivan. 10 of 26 for C.J. Stroud. Was that a function of Northwestern's offense sort of just like throwing up their hands and accepting fate, and Ohio State still trying to pass into the wind, as the old saying goes?
Absolutely, because Ohio State, I think C.J. Stroud started out 0 for 5. Mm-hmm. And they were trying and against the wind, whereas I said earlier, like Northwestern threw once against the wind in the second quarter. I don't know what they did in the third quarter in terms of how many passes. You could probably look that up to give us an idea of exactly how many times they threw in this game against the wind. But C.J. Stroud, I think the more you throw, the more drops you have. And that's one reason why Northwestern didn't have – they were able to complete a higher percentage because they didn't throw as many.
Northwestern in the third quarter, 1 of 1 for 9 yards passing.
So they threw 2 times. They completed both for about 13 yards. So maybe they should have thrown more. 100%.
And I think one thing that it's I think easy for people to understand sort of in theory why throwing against the wind is difficult. Because you think kicking against the wind is that was not easy. Throwing with the wind, though. I mean, I saw C.J. Stroud down on the field before the game, and Kyle McCord as well, and Devin Brown as well. Throwing with the wind, trying to adjust to, okay, the first one went 15 yards long. Okay, so I got to take a lot off on this ball and really, or get it low and kind of cut through the wind, and then the next one's short, and then they're like trying to get it dialed in. And the problem is, this is not just a fan blowing where it's consistent. It's just like, well, on this play, the wind is blowing 27 miles an hour. And on this play, the wind is blowing 15 miles an hour. And on this one, it's blowing 42. And there was one to Julian Fleming down the left sideline in the third quarter, I think, where Julian Fleming, if that ball's there, that is, he walks in. And the ball might have been 8 yards overthrown. And, you have seen enough C.J. Stroud to know, like, C.J. Stroud has the touch to throw that ball. And it was just like not even close, because that was the day.
One of the things TJ Stroud said in the post game was like, I don't have time to like throw the grass up in the air and gauge it on each snap. I wish I did, but I just have to go out there and try my best and throw it as best I can. And you saw the issues. We'll get back to that. What's the super chat?
Jordan Kapler with tremendous content. Appreciate you, Jordan. Always value your contributions to the show. There's not much more I can say about this bizarre game that hasn't already been said, so I'll just say this. It's unfortunate to see Tom. I mean, in our defense, we are pretty backlit here, so you can't really see me. It looks like I'm testifying in a mob trial. So we're doing our part. We're doing what we can.
Is it unfortunate to see Tom, or just unfortunate to see Tom? No comma.
Maybe a little from column A, a little from column B.
Just CJ Stroud throwing the ball. The conditions were not ideal, obviously. And also as you're watching the game on TV, not only is it the wind blowing like across your screen, it's blowing towards your screen as well.
Mm-hmm.
So you saw a number of these passes get blown towards the screen and towards where the camera deck, basically, where that throw, I think there is maybe not that throw to Julian Fleming, but there are others that, like the one to Emeka Egbuka down the middle where he's double covered and the ball is like 5 yards to the left. It was blowing a lot of those passes, and that's why Northwestern only threw twice. And that's just, I've never seen the wind like this, and we've seen rain and other things. Ohio State has been able to throw the ball in the rain and been able to throw the ball in the snow, and the blizzard at Michigan last year. Everybody remembers.
Michigan fans are right now going, it was just a little snow. It was more than a little snow, but it was also a little bit of, there's wind there, not wind
And
like
they
today,
threw for 390 yards.
Yeah. One thing that I wanted to run past you, and you tell me your thoughts on this. As Ryan Day shaped his offense around trying to win a national championship and what you need to beat Alabama and Clemson and Georgia on a fast, dry track indoors in the Fiesta Bowl, Peach Bowl, national championship game, at the expense of having an offense that is functional in whatever crazy Big Ten crap weather you're going to get, which you're going to get it at least once a year, maybe twice a year. And, this is now, Michigan last year, just that the offense just kind of bogged down and couldn't do what it needed to do. Same thing today. I know he wants them to be tough and be able to run the ball. And, if it's 3rd and 2 and they know we're going to run it, we're going to be able to run it anyway. Well, it was 3rd and 1 and they ran it. And they appeared to know exactly where they were going to run it, and they got stopped. And it was 4th and 1, and they were going to run it. And everyone knew they were going to run it. And again, Northwestern seemed to know exactly where it was going, and they got stopped. Maybe this is a scheme, how they're developing their players, types of players they're recruiting, all that stuff. Is he focused on, is sort of the baked-in assumption, well, of course, Ohio State's going to beat Michigan to win the Big Ten. And so really the real hurdle is the playoff. Am I wildly off base there?
Is that wrong though? I mean, basically.
Well, I guess we'll find out in 3 weeks.
The thing is, I don't think anybody saw Michigan getting good again. Why would you? Why would you assume that Jim Harbaugh is only going to make Michigan into a playoff team? And so I think now you've got to take that into account. But also the injuries with the running game have been insane. And so that's been an issue. But I think that's why you have the defense. That's why you can they withstood it with that kind of offense in this game. They only haven't done it once. So in 3-4 years now, they'll have another opportunity to make it twice where you haven't done it, and that's where things get sticky. But so far, like it's workable, and if you've got the defense that can stop a little bit of the run, and you have an offense that can make it into a game, sometimes you're going to lose. Most of the time, you're going to win those things, and I don't know that you can judge everything based off of the one time you lose instead of the 3 times you've actually won that game.
Yeah, and that's fair.
The answer is yes, though.
The answer is yes. I know the answer is yes. Sometimes I phrase things as questions when I know the answer is yes. I do. The other thing that makes me think about that is on the indoor facility at Ohio State, there are big banners, big picture banners of glorious triumphs of the past. Here, all their Big Ten championships are up there. So they've got the 2017 Wisconsin, 2018 Northwestern, 2019 Wisconsin, 2020 Northwestern, all the, pictures of all those and Big Ten champions and the score and the date and all that stuff. There are 2 postseason bowl games from the last, since the start of the Urban Meyer, 2 postseason games commemorated up there. You, dear listener, are thinking, well, certainly the national championship win over Oregon would be up there. In fact, it is not. They literally won the national championship. There's no banner up there. It's the 2015 Sugar Bowl win over Alabama and the 2020 Sugar Bowl win over Clemson, which is that has been fascinating to me for a couple of years because it's like, that's a little bit of a recruiting statement, and these are the teams we recruit against, and Ohio State and Michigan have not gone head to head on the recruiting trail much in recent years, but there are no, there are big displays about Michigan. It's not that they've forgotten about Michigan, but in the indoor field, there's nothing about beating Michigan. There's nothing about winning literally a national championship against, they have a banner for the year, but there's not a picture of Ezekiel Elliott bowling over 2 Oregon defenders with the score and the date. It's just the Clemson game and the Alabama game, and that's one of those, like, looking at it now, you wonder, are they a little, are they
too far?
Are they 2 steps ahead of where they should be on this stuff?
They've forgotten what it takes to maybe.
Yeah. You got to get to the playoff to.
But the rule. First, you get the sugar, then you get the money, then you get the rest.
And then you put the lotion on
the Sugar Bowls. That's what I'm talking about.
The Sugar Bowl, yes.
Or else you get the hose again.
Maybe he really likes sugar. I mean, that's a possibility.
Does anybody have any scores for me?
21-6, Georgia.
It's a good time for Hendon Hooker to have a rough game in terms of the Heisman balloting. Although here comes Stetson Bennett,
the mailman, going to deliver to New York City.
Well, I've long said Tennessee is now being exposed. So, as I just heard that score,
let's go through some defensive stats real quick, because this was, the Ohio State offense did not look good. The Ohio State defense was, we talked earlier, they have a bunch of yards and a bunch of plays, but the defensive performance was pretty good. They didn't give anything big. Tommy Eichenberg, 13 tackles, 10 solo tackles. Ronnie Hickman had a really good game. I felt like Ronnie Hickman was kind of in there a lot. Lathan Ransom, 9 tackles. Steel Chambers, 8 tackles. Denzel Burke, 6 tackles. What's interesting to me there, Tony, no defensive lineman.
Well, I think the problem was you had 5 offensive linemen. You had 2 tight ends in there. You had the quarterback being the running back. So you had so many gaps where you had to have a linebacker or a safety tackling because the defensive linemen weren't getting in there. They were being swarmed by the 5 offensive linemen and the tight ends, that they're just trying to hold their ground basically and hope that a linebacker or a safety would come free. And, eventually that would happen. Sometimes it would be 5 yards. Sometimes it would be 3 yards. And even when they get like 2, it's like they're still pushing people. And there are long stretches where the defensive line was getting pushed around. And yet, 3.5 yards per carry at the end of the day.
So this is a very interesting thing. I'm just looking at the scoreboard now, right? And you look around the areas around where we are right now. Michigan State 9, Illinois 7. Michigan State is bad this year, and missing a lot of players. And it is, I'm sure, every bit as windy in Champaign as it was here. And Illinois, who has gotten away, been doing it with defense and running the ball, which should play well in a game like this, down 9-7 right now. Kansas up 17-7 on Oklahoma State. Pittsburgh up 10-6 on Syracuse. It's just, this, as much as I'm sure, I don't know if Ryan Day said the phrase, we're going to enjoy this one for 24 hours. I'm sure if he did, it was not well received on twitter.com.
I don't think he did.
But okay. Yeah, I think that was probably wise. I
think it's more of we're going to be relieved for the next 24 hours to have won this game.
Yeah. Exhale, survive, and advance. And, I guess if you're looking for a positive on that front, even if they drop 2 spots in the college football playoff rankings, you're still, if you win out, if you can solve the issue in, don't have anything stupid happen at Maryland. Maryland got clubbed by Wisconsin today, I saw. But, don't have anything stupid happening against Indiana or Maryland, and then figure it out against Michigan. For as much talk as there is about toughness, that's the game where you can make it not just be talk. So, let's see what that looks like. If you get through there, and then you get Illinois on a fast dry track in Indianapolis, that feels like that's not going to go great for Illinois. Like, Illinois wants to play Ohio State in Champaign and not in a dome in Indianapolis. So, it feels like everything is still there for them. but there is work to do over the next 21 days.
Yeah, no, they could have lost this game and still beat Michigan and still win the Big Ten championship and still make the playoffs. But talking with Devin and Ratcliffe in the post game, he felt like Ohio State found something with the run game, the inside zone, keeping inside, and sort of they did when they found it with Travion Henderson the week before, and maybe moving forward they'll do more of that, less of the outside zone that gets no yards or 1 yard or a loss of one because Maya just can't get there and the blocks just aren't there, and Donovan Jackson misses his guy or Matt Jones misses his guy the other side, and just issues like the first 2 or 3 drives, the offensive line would get a penalty and basically end any hope. It'd be 1st and 20. You're like, well, I don't know how you're going to get 20 yards in 3 plays against this.
Right. Yeah. I think it was the first play of the game. They had a nice game. They get called back for a hold, and then it was 1st and 20, and it was like, well, get Jesse Mirco warm.
Speaking of Jesse Mirco, his 77-yard punt.
Was that the one that went out of bounds, inside the 5?
No. That was the one that was a touchback. From the time he kicked it to the time it stopped, and it rolled through the back of the end zone, it had traveled over 100 yards from foot to the time it stopped.
That is incredible. And I said on Twitter that the one that he kicked out of bounds at the, went out of bounds at 3 or 4 yard line, that was the most impressive thing I saw literally any human being do all day long. Because the wind is blowing hard in your face, the wind is blowing across the field. It is very, and you hit the ball a 1/4 of an inch further left, and that ball goes out at the 25-yard line. That was someone CJ Stroud can't throw the grass in the air. They didn't see Jesse Mirco do that either. That was like otherworldly. And, they pinned them back. And then we got to talk about the defensive line rotation that followed that, because there's a point where, let's first finish praising Jesse Mirco. That was incredible. I have no idea how he did that. I don't know if he could tell you how he did that. That was incredible. So they've got Northwestern pinned back inside the 5. A chance to force a turnover, really swing the game, really put your foot on Northwestern's throat. Is JT Tuimoloau out there that drive? No. Is Zach Harrison out there that drive? No. I mean, I know they like to rotate guys, but wouldn't you want to have your best players out there for what seems like a potential game-changing situation?
If we're talking about the same lineup, it was Jack Sawyer, Javante Jean-Baptiste, Ty Hamilton, and Teron Vincent.
I think that's right. Yeah.
And I was thinking the same thing. Put your heaviest guys up there and just go win the line of scrimmage rather than giving it up and giving up some punting room.
Well, and Mike Hall has been so good this year, and he played. He was healthy. He played.
Well, I don't know how healthy he is, or else I think he'd be playing more. Ty Hamilton got the start ahead of Jerron Cage. Even Jerron Cage, it's just so bizarre this year. Is everybody hurt? Is everybody's dealing with a little something?
Mm-hmm.
Feels like everybody's dealing with a lot of something this year, and it's all we have. It's all very secretive, and Mike Hall has been a few weeks back playing 8 snaps and then playing more, but I was surprised he wasn't out there more this week, and certainly not enough pass rush opportunities for him in this kind of game. So
no, that struck me as a little weird. The offensive line. I mean, the guards are a problem. I mean, I don't have a great view from the field, but I can see when guys are getting knocked down frequently. Don't you have to think about, you've got Enoch Famahi. Enoch Famahi, when he has been called upon, has played well. Do you not owe it to yourself to at least try? Because if you know guys are not 100% and you have a viable option, do you not owe it to yourself to give that a shot and just see, try it for 2 drives and see what happens?
Well, and after Matt Jones got whistled for the hold, whenever that was, was it the first drive? I
think that might have been the first play of the game.
But he got yanked the next play, and Enoch Famahi went in.
Okay.
And then the next play, Matt Jones came back in. So it's you're punishing him, but only for a play. Not that he needs to be punished. It's not about punishment.
Right.
It's about putting your best 5 in there. And right now, if this is the best 5, I think there's some concerns there. And they'll probably look much better against Indiana next week. but it won't mean anything.
Right, exactly. Yeah. What could you possibly see against Indiana that would make you draw any kind of positive conclusion?
Well, and I talked to Ryan, to Devin about that as well, where he's talking about the inside stuff. And he was saying if he sees more of that, like a consistent concerted effort, 250 yards of that, where you are winning the line of scrimmage, and it's not stretch stuff, it's just actual physical contact, going and getting it, that would tell him something. But it would also tell you that you're doing it against Indiana, and until you do it against Michigan, it doesn't matter.
I'm just looking outside, and there's a poncho or a garbage bag flying past the window of the press box. We are conservatively 80 feet up in the air.
Yeah.
So
Yes, we are.
Yeah, 8th floor. There you go.
Look at you
Look
with
at
your
me.
estimating. No 13th floor now.
Just to give you, well, that's because there's no 10th, 11th, or 12th floor.
That's a lot of superstitious.
Just to give you a sense for the Indiana situation right now. Indiana's starting quarterback today is Jack Tuttle, who said last month, I'm going to transfer away from Indiana, and he's starting for Indiana against Penn State today. So that's, when we say you can't take a lot from Indiana, that's what we mean. I feel like there's stuff that they need to, and maybe they're trying stuff in practice and it's not working and we just don't know it. But it feels like you sort of owe it to yourself to, if the same stuff is not working consistently, you owe it to yourself to at least explore some other options. And they have talked about Josh Fryer and Ike Mahi as being guys who are sort of in the circle of trust, where they trust Josh Fryer to be out there in the, as the extra tight end wearing number 41. You've seen Ike Mahi come in for individual plays and individual drives and all that. Maybe they're seeing stuff in practice that we are not privy to, but it feels like that's something you almost have to take some kind of a look at.
Well, and then the problem becomes worsened by teams seeing these weaknesses, and then it's like, that's who we attack. And then it just becomes just an avalanche.
Right.
Like you throw two guys at Donovan Jackson or Matt Jones, or you attack them a certain way. Like these guys are getting tells now, and they're getting defenses know what best ways to attack them, and so they get that for an entire game, and it gets difficult.
Man, I'm just looking at the first half drives for Ohio State. 3 plays, -4 yards, 8 plays, 28 yards, 3 plays, 9 yards, 4 plays, 9 yards, 4 plays, 15 yards, 4 plays, 15 yards, punt, 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 downs, punt, punt. Now, then they got back-to-back touchdown drives. The second half, the last drive of the first half was 6 plays, 46 yards touchdown, then 6 plays, 45 yards touchdown, 8 plays, 32 yards a punt, 3 plays, 8 yards a punt, 5 plays, 62 yards touchdown, and 7 plays, 18 yards downs. And, they lost it on downs because they took a knee on the final play. So that was, they only really got stuffed once in the second half. That was their first drive of the fourth quarter. So, is that the talent winning out and wearing down? Is that they adapted to the conditions better? What do you chalk that up to?
No, I think it has to be all of it, because the talent does eventually win out. It did in this one. And as Ryan Day said, yes, the conditions are going to be bad, but it's whoever handles it the best. I don't think Ohio State handled it the best in the first half.
No.
I don't even know that they handled it the best in the second half. So maybe then it just goes to talent wearing the Northwestern defense out, which then reasserts everything that Ryan Day said about, you just keep pounding the rock and eventually the rock will crack. And this becomes testimony as opposed to theory, when I don't know that it should be testimony yet. Like, I don't think it should be written down in ink that this is the word. I think there's still, you got to look at the opponent. You got to look at why those big plays happened and whether or not it was your doing or missed tackles. And when Mine Williams is making 3 guys missed, I don't know that you can just, hey, look at the offensive line.
Yeah. Kevin, do we have questions we need to get to, or should we continue?
We just got a lot of angry people. People are done with Justin Fry. People are done with Ryan Day. I mean, it is your typical Saturday in the heat of battle comments. Some people will end up backing off of them under cooler heads prevail, and others probably not.
Yeah.
How's Tennessee doing?
It's still 21-6.
So they are losing if they're not winning.
Correct.
Now, I mean, if you would like to phrase those those angry comments as a question, we can address them. I will say Justin Fry, it's his first season. Justin Fry is, the old Bill Parcells, if you want me to cook, let me buy the ingredients. Justin Fry is cooking with Greg Stidwaro's ingredients. And, the star power is there in terms of recruiting rankings, but, these are not the guys. You might recruit a different size, shape, style, whatever of offensive lineman than what Stud did. He's not in the point where he has say over what Mickey Marotti does in the strength program. So, there's other factors here too. They can't run the ball other than Justin Fry. And they've ran the ball. This is not the first time we have seen them struggle to run the ball. The offensive scheme factors into that as well. The health of the running backs factors into that as well. Mayan Williams is not 100%. I can tell you that with 100% certainty. Mayan Williams is not 100% right now. And, he still ended up having a pretty decent game. And CJ Stroud, did what he needed to do. And, I don't know why everyone's not happy. CJ Stroud ran the ball. It seems like everyone got what they wanted, right?
Well, and the thing is also, we can touch on it after the super chat.
Jeff Straley says, I opened the SoCo eggnog at halftime. Too early?
No. That's like, what, 5 o'clock? It's 5 o'clock somewhere.
Oh, it's never eggnog o'clock.
No, I can't do eggnog. Never tried
My
it.
least favorite of nogs.
But also, Southern Comfort is too cough syrupy, based back on my college days, which I base everything off of my college days.
Mm-hmm.
What were we talking about?
We were talking about Justin Fry, but and Ryan Day, I think we can start to have a referendum on Ryan Day 21 days from now, because you're going to know, if you're Ryan Day and you enjoy living in Columbus, Ohio, I would strongly recommend winning the game 21 days from now. He's not getting fired this year, regardless. He's not getting fired next year. But, if they lose this year to Michigan and they miss the playoff, then you're entering next season with the narrative around the program being, has Ryan, now that Urban Meyer's players are gone, can Ryan Day, yada, yada, yada. And then you got to go to Ann Arbor with Michigan have a returning starting quarterback and Ohio State having a new starting quarterback. Then that puts a lot on that game, and then you maybe are having that conversation. But we'll find out. Like I said, we will learn a lot in 3 weeks, because if Ryan Day wins in 3 weeks, then everything is fixed. The world is right. The world is right again. Everyone will love everyone, and
it's okay to lose to Illinois.
And you completely eliminate that conversation. So just a lot of this is going to hinge on 3 weeks from now, and the Ohio State coaching staff has some work to do before November 26th.
I will say also, judging the running game in this kind of game where you can't throw the ball, this isn't a normal defensive situation you're going to face, because if a team is just going to throw 8 or 9 in the box against you, you're going to throw the ball on them.
Mm-hmm.
You couldn't do that in this game. So that's where you had to equate numbers a little bit by having CJ Stroud become a runner. That's what Northwestern did, making their Wildcat a runner to increase the numbers and to cover up the guys in the box, because this one, we talk about, if you're one-dimensional, you're easy to stop.
Mm-hmm.
They were one-dimensional. So it's not going to be easy.
Right. And, they were, even being one-dimensional, they never got the passing game going. And, the threat of the passing game was such that they were never that close to completing a lot of downfield. So you didn't have to have, Northwestern was not playing it 3 deep at any point that I saw during the course of the game, because why would you? You just, the ball's not going down the field. There's CJ Stroud looking downfield. And that one, I think I'm looking at the picture that's on the screen right now, and I think that was on the same drive where Mecca Ibuka ended up scoring the touchdown. Would that have been the first touchdown of the game? Yeah, there's a Mecca Ibuka scoring the touchdown. So CJ Stroud looking downfield, I think he ended up scrambling on that play. But, it was just, you would look downfield and there would be someone there, and normally CJ Stroud can pinpoint it into windows and the 1-inch drill and all that kind of stuff. How many inches would you have been comfortable with today? The 1-inch drill turns into like the 36-inch drill, the 48-inch drill, because where's the ball going? Who knows?
Is it over the fence? Is it to the right of the fence? To the left of the fence?
Right there on the screen, there's a guy who was, more often than not, when they threw the ball, he caught it and he did something with it. And It feels to me like
Marvin Harrison for the listeners.
Yes, for the listeners. Yes, Marvin Harrison Jr. He feels like a guy who this is the best athlete on the field. He will be the best athlete on any field he's on all season, quite possibly. Sometimes you just gotta like chuck it up and let your dude make a play.
It's interesting to hear scouts and other people talk, and Brian Hartline talk about him, how he's a 6'4" guy, but he's got short legs, which makes him able to make people miss. Like he's got the legs the length of his 6-foot father, and he's got a longer torso, and it allows him to move in and out of cuts quicker and do stuff that other 6'4", 205-pound receivers can't, and that includes stuff after the catch. You catch the ball at 8 yards, you make a guy miss, you go pick up the first down, and he did that a couple of times. I don't think it was every time, like last week where he had 10 catches and 10 first down conversions. I think his first few catches were conversions, and they may have all been, but it certainly wasn't 10 because he only had 5 catches.
Yeah. Rick S. says, look at the lake behind Tom and Tony now. It looks calm. I can assure you, I'm looking at the trees down below, and they are all blowing very strongly. You can't see the white caps. Tony was posted earlier. You can see the white caps. Lake Michigan is not, I mean, that's a 10-minute walk from here, probably, maybe more. And
let's not find out.
Yeah, well, we're probably. What if we did the morning show from the beach? Who says no?
The morning show.
No. Oh, Kevin says no. Well, that's a surprising
producer.
Turn of events. Yeah.
I don't know if when the rain really started to come down, like the third quarter. I think that's when it was. Maybe it was.
Yes, it was. It was right around the time I tweeted out the picture from inside the tunnel where I was huddled with all the other photographers taking refuge.
Because when you looked out on the water, it was like there's something happening. Like this is happening. It was like where is Mark Wahlberg? Just like that's the happening. Like this is not natural.
Yeah, it was crazy windy, crazy rainy. I was honestly surprised you didn't have a big play happen just from someone slipping, a defender slipping at some point. You just sort of assume you're going to get one of those. And, maybe that was what happened on the CJ Stroud run or one of the other long plays. I'm looking through a camera lens, so I have a very narrow view of things.
No, it's just the defense never expected him to run the ball.
Yeah.
So there's no slipping.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I said this earlier. I cannot ever remember a game quite like that where, this was not a hurricane game, but the weather impacted it every bit as much as you think of, the old Notre Dame Clemson hurricane game, the Notre Dame NC State hurricane game. I mean, there's been a bunch of those where it's raining so hard and everyone just kind of throws up their hands and goes, well, Pat Fitzgerald was asked about, playing Penn State and playing Ohio State and how well his defense played in those two games. And, it's like, is there something about that your defense really steps up in the moment? And if you remember Penn State, it was raining sideways for basically, it was like an Ollie Williams game. It's raining sideways. It was, and they won, Penn State won 17-7. And, then you had the game today and Fitzgerald essentially said I appreciate the question. I appreciate the sentiment. I appreciate you trying to give us, but the weather had a lot to do with it. Essentially, it's just, I think Pat Fitzgerald knows if this is sunny and 50 today, and the wind of 5 miles an hour, this is not a 21-7 game.
No, there was a 30-point line for a reason. But if you happily hit the under on this one. Good job on you.
I sent you guys several texts during the course of the game, and I don't know if this one went through. There was an ESPN personality last night whose one of his locks of the week was the over in the Army Air Force game, which I said to you, something like 35 of the last 40 Surface Academy versus Surface Academy matchups have gone under. Shockingly, the final of that game was 13-7 Air Force. So it only missed by 20 points, Tony. Who could have seen that coming? You know who might have? Mike Smith. He's a very intelligent man. He says, why not give Jones back up at guard and let Chip get some run to get guys healthy? Jones has struggled, and if health is an issue, let other guys play.
There was a point, and I think the point was halftime, where it was like, why don't you let Chip run it? Let Dallin run it. Just a change of pace to see if something is working. And then this goes back to the Ryan Day thing of you just keep pounding the rock. Eventually the rock will crack. And it did. And so it's like, yeah, I told you. But I still think getting one of those two guys out there, they got Chip out there once to pass block. And it's like, we're going to put you out here and we don't need mine to, take another blow. So, you throw Chip out there and he does his thing. but I was surprised. Clearly, we were both expecting Chip Trayanum to run the ball today. I remember saying it was either the pregame show or the Friday show saying, like, if Mayan is out there all 4 quarters, that's a bad sign.
And you was right. Yeah, it was. I think I look at that and I say that is Ryan Day saying this is a close game. We just need to not turn the ball over and not do anything stupid. Who do I trust to not turn the ball over just being stupid? And that person is Mayan Williams. There was a point during the pregame warmups. I don't think I threw this picture in the library or the gallery, but there was a play where I couldn't tell what happened. But CJ Stroud took a snap, and he was, maybe going to hand it to Chip Trayanum and maybe not, and the ball ended up on the ground. And it may have been CJ Stroud bobbled the snap. It may have been, but I saw that, and I went back and looked at pictures and saw that, and I thought, huh. And you wonder if Ryan Day saw that and thought, you know what, I don't want to see happen during the game. Because you got to remember, these are, Mayan Williams has been taking handoffs from, how many handoffs has Mayan Williams taken from CJ Stroud in practice? 500, 1,000? How many handoffs has Chip Trayanum taken from CJ Stroud in practice? 50? I mean, there is a certain amount, and Dallin Hayden is very talented. Dallin Hayden is a true freshman. You can be the coach who runs the true freshman out there in the 1-score game in the second half, and then he fumbles it, and then you're the idiot who ran out the true freshman. I mean, it's just that felt like Ryan Day saying, what is the absolute safest thing I can do that people will not be able to question, and that is going to give us the best chance to win. And that felt like that's how he got there.
And the conditions being what they were, and I know people are going to be like, stop talking about the conditions. You're making excuses. But in this game, a punt is an okay play.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that
depending on which direction you were punting.
Well, there's that, but even you have to admit there are times where punting is winning today in this kind of game.
Yeah, 100%. I strongly disagree with Buckeye Zach here, who says, I just want to say Tony's the GOAT. And well, actually, he didn't capitalize it, so it might have been like the opposite of the hero. So in which case, strong agree. Anyway, no, you did not see me contest one 4th down decision today. I'm not a fourth down robot who's going to tell you have to do this regardless because the numbers say, like, I get it. Like, sometimes there are weird circumstances, but so they played. I didn't have big issues with a lot of the stuff that they did. I thought that was probably by and large okay.
Yeah, Kevin from Pickerington, first time, long time. What are your thoughts about Ohio State's 3rd and 1 plays that they ran, including the stretch and some of those other decisions? I'll hang up and listen.
We're going to have to go to break.
We're going to need you to turn your radio down. I can show you. I honestly, and here's the thing, I saw a bunch of those plays get stuffed, but where I am on the field and looking through a camera lens, I have a terrible view, so I'm going to have to defer to you.
Well, it's just guys getting blown up, and the stretch keeps getting stretched out even further, and there's nowhere to basically cut in, and nobody was winning at the point of attack, and in fact, they're losing and not even holding ground. They were just losing ground, and that's one of the things that Devin and I talked about, where the more they went inside, the better they did. It's the outside stuff that wasn't working as effectively. What are you laughing about?
I just Mike Smith just had something about bold super chat about bold predictions. I can't believe there are no bold predictions for CJ having more rushing yards than passing. Good to see them finally use the QB run, which then made me look at our at least my bold predictions, because I had them in the notes app on my computer, and we did a new thing this week where we had to assign each other a thing that we were almost certain was going to happen. It was like, and the one that Tony assigned me was CJ Stroud completes at least 2 passes in a row.
Did that happen?
I don't know. I legitimately don't know, and that is incredible.
And after I did it, I was like, no, because I was still kicking myself today about this, where I was like, I wanted to go 5, but you were so kind with the 6-yard run, and I was like, no, I can't go 5. And then I went way too far to the 2. And it's like, well, I can't go 1. Let's go 2. No. And you're like, too quick, too bad. You took your finger off the checker. It's two completions in a row. And I'm going to assume he hit it, but I won't be shocked if he did.
It is. And
somebody can let us know if you want to look it up.
If you would like a synopsis of how wild this game is. Honestly, the only one I might have hit is my 3-pointer, which was Northwestern has at least 2 quarters with under 1.5 yards per play. They might have, because there were a couple quarters they didn't do a whole heck of a lot, but that is.
I know I hit my 4th down conversion will be stopped.
Oh yeah, there you
So
go.
that's
Both
at least
teams did.
one.
Yep. Yeah. Boy,
Well,
this
unless
is,
one canceled the other, they're out.
yeah. Oh man,
Yes,
what a,
about that, even in the first quarter, Stroud, CJ passed 7 yards to Fleming. Then there was CJ left complete 7 yards to Stover. So that's even just in the first quarter.
yeah.
Wow.
Rick S says, take the bold predictions over to the shredder and deposit therein. Yeah, no argument for me.
We can't. This is a paper-free press box.
Yes, it is. It is.
So I will have to throw the laptops
Yes.
into the shredder.
Yeah. So where do you go from here with this game? What do you take away? What you weren't down in the postgame press conference. You were hosting the postgame show. So, and I was in the Pat Fitzgerald press conference. So I was not in to hear Day's answers and stuff. I'm gonna be very interested to go back and listen to what he had to say. But I'm assuming there was a good amount of, we got to go back and watch the film. Like, what are you interested?
Well,
once he has gone back and watched the film, what are you interested in finding out from him on Tuesday?
Is it just more of the same? Because it sure seems like it's more of the same. And if it's more of the same, why aren't you fixing it? Why aren't you doing something different? Why are you expecting results from doing the same thing over and over again? Definition of insanity and all of that stuff. But I keep going back to, well, you look at the fourth quarter and it worked. And it's like, but it takes you 4 quarters. And at some point, you're going to lose a game in those 3 quarters. And the fourth quarter is never going to happen.
Right. Yeah. Well, and then you get to a game where if you're behind after 3 quarters, then you don't have a whole lot of possessions in the fourth quarter. So you don't have a lot of time to catch up.
And then you're one-dimensional because you have to throw the ball.
Right. eBuckeye 91 says, could they be saving new running formations for Michigan? I mean, it could be, but
they add stuff, each week.
Right.
But I don't know that they're holding anything back. We saw the quarterback power this week with CJ. So you've already seen the quarterback run, and I think that helps each week, even if you don't see it in those games.
Well, and
it helps a little.
I think Michigan would go into that game assuming they're going to see that, because Ohio State's going to be saving stuff, and they have seen the film from the Michigan State game in 2020. They know CJ Stroud can run, and if you haven't seen it, you almost go into that game assuming you're going to see it. So now you've seen it. So I don't know that materially changes anything about their ability to use it against Michigan.
We've talked about this in the past. Go look at the close games this year, and go look at CJ Stroud's rush numbers. He runs in the games that they need to win, that need to be won. They need to win them all, but the ones that need to be won, that are close, he's running the ball. And I would expect, taking away sacks against Michigan, 5, 6, 7 carries, something like that.
Yeah. And
unless he's just throwing the ball all over the place.
Right. Well, and I think he's probably going to be able to pick up, those are probably a lot of 4-yard carries, 5-yard carries, something like that. I don't think you're going to see a 44-yarder against Michigan. If you do, that's obviously a big positive for Ohio State. But
Sean Clifford did.
That was 62 yards, so that's totally different. Yes, it feels like you're going to see some of it, but I don't think that's going to, that might be a big first down at some point rather than completely changing the game. So,
any questions? I know we're like an hour into
We're about 55 in.
So what are we thinking here as you talk it out? 300 people online.
Tom said we have to record in the morning,
Yeah, I didn't. Rick S says Michigan's a lot faster than Northwestern on defense. That's the question. So they will run Stroud down. Yes, but Ohio State's probably multi-dimensional in that game. So then, especially theoretically, Jackson Smith-Jigba could be back for that game. Okay, so that there's a lot of what ifs and questions that you got to kind of figure out between them. And if the weather is 50 and sunny, that's very different than 32 and windy or snowing or whatever it is. So, you tell me what the weather is like, and that will go a decent amount toward telling you what the Ohio State offense is going to look like that day.
CJ does a good job of spinning out, of traveling, backtracking, and looping around and gaining ground away from defenders, defensive linemen specifically. Now, I think he can get away from a Mike Morris. Can he get away from a Jalen Harrell? Can he get away from an Iabioki at Michigan? Those two guys are more of the the speed rush linebackery types that can perhaps bring him down. But CJ Stroud, once he gets moving, I'm surprised at how well he can get away from guys on the pass rush and then either run it or like look downfield and, tries he might to look downfield. It's and in this one, it's just like, just go get yards.
Yeah. It just anyone who had anyone even close to them, you could be just you were not going to be able to throw the ball downfield. That's just how it went. A shot? No. Okay. Just no matter how. If there was someone within 5 yards of your guy downfield, you were not going to take a shot. And even when there was not someone within 5 yards of your guy downfield, it was very hard to hit someone downfield, regardless of which way you're going with or against the wind.
Yeah, definitely. What are we thinking? Are we ready to wrap up?
I think we're wrapping up. We're out of. I think we're running out of questions.
Okay.
So yes.
All right, we're hitting the 2-hour mark right on the entire live stream.
There you go.
Right about now. So I think that will be a good opportunity for us to go ahead and call it a day here from Evanston. I want to thank you all for tuning in, following the game, seeing all of the post-game press conference. Brian Day, CJ Stroud, a little bit of Pat Fitzgerald, very little bit of Mayan Williams. You guys see he's not a big, doesn't necessarily want to talk too much. And so you got to experience that. And of course, thank you for joining us here on the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. If you're watching now, go ahead and hit the thumbs up if you could. Go ahead and hit the bell to subscribe and get notified when we go live and we drop videos. But then that will do it for all of us, me, Tom, Kevin behind the camera. Thank you all for tuning in, and we'll talk to you guys later.